Hello, my name is Bené Wilson. I am Vice President of Education for the Digital Journalism Task Force, and I want to thank you all for attending this Hangout. We had a couple of snags, but I think we're okay now. First, I would like to just get right into this, and I'm going to introduce Jim Bettinger, and Jim is the Director of the Knight Fellowship Program. Jim?
Thanks, Bené, to you and to Tracy Powell for organizing this again. This is the third year we've done a chat like this, which is designed to help people understand a little more about the John S. Knight Fellowships, JSK as we call it these days, and to get some tips on how to apply and how to think about applying. We're eager to get going. We're very proud of our fellowship, and we're very proud of the diversity of our fellowship, and this chat, among others, is intended to keep that emphasis going. So, with that, why don't we get started?
Thanks so much, Jim. And my first question is to you. Jim, you guys have really worked hard to reach out to different diversity groups to make sure that you have a diverse class of fellows, and that work has paid off. But I wanted to ask you, why do you think it's so important to do this?
I think diversity or inclusiveness, whatever word we want to use, is important for several reasons, but the most important one is it's a long-term strategy for success. This country, this world, this country is more and more diverse every day, and journalism and journalism fellowships need to reflect that, need to bake that in. That's a core value of ours. We think that having diverse voices, many different kinds of voices in the room makes for a much stronger discussion. And since I would describe us as a problem-solving fellowship, we think that it helps solve problems better.
Thank you, Jim. And we're just going to get right into it with the fellows. I'm so pleased to have Latoya Peterson, who was a fellow last year, and you guys saw her bio on the flyer, and Yvonne Lau, who is a current fellow. So we'll just get into the questions. I'm going to ask a few, and then please use the Q&A feature, and we will answer as many of your questions as possible in the next hour. My first question is, I'd like you guys to talk about how you first learned about the Knight Fellowship, and what was it about the fellowship that made you want to apply? Yvonne, why don't you start?
Sure, I'll go first. So actually I had heard about the fellowship a couple of years ago, even when I was at the Associated Press. And at that point, I think they were just starting to revamp it with the journalism challenges, but I still viewed it as a mid-career type of a fellowship for mid-career journalists. So I never felt like I was in the right place and time in my own career to actually apply. Then, you know, I think throughout the course of going through Thunderdome and Digital First Media, and I felt like I was at a place where I had the skills and the confidence to contribute into a fellowship program like this, but also I felt like I was at a point where I really wanted to expand from just my video journalism background and really take the time and actually see what else is out there. So I decided to apply last year. But really, the kicker for me was I didn't actually apply until I felt like I had a project idea, a journalism challenge idea, which is not necessarily necessary. I think since coming into the program and learning more about it, they've really focused on trying to invest in the journalist, less about the project, because ideas can change. So that was how I came across the fellowship. I had heard about it from colleagues. It was very well presented throughout the industry at AAJ conferences, which is something I'm very much involved with. So,
thank you. Latoya? Oh, I think we have lost Latoya. She was having, oh, here she is. I'm sorry. Latoya, go ahead.
Hey, sorry about that. It dropped off for a second. My Wi-Fi in this hotel is not the best, so I keep going back and forth. Are we still on the first question of
Yes, we are.
How do we get there? Okay, perfect. So for me, I had never even heard of a journalism fellowship program before the Knight Fellowships. I didn't know anything about it. And my good friend Dory Maynard was the one who encouraged me to apply, and I looked at it and I was like, I am not enough of a journalist for this. I am not accomplished enough. Like, they're never going to want me. I'm not going to do it. And, you know, I made up all these different reasons, and Dory was like, that's a lie. That's wrong. And I'm going to talk to Jim right now. I'm going to double check, see if there's a college degree requirement, which there is not. See if there's any mid-career requirements, which there are not anymore.
Right.
And you should apply and check this out. And so in the beginning, I was like, okay, well, I'll try this out, but didn't really think it was going to go anywhere. I didn't think they were going to pick me or anything was going to happen. And so I enlisted a bunch of friends to be my accountability partners and research what fellowships were. And the thing that actually got me to apply was talking to Jenny A. Lee, who does part of the Search for the Nieman Fellowships, which is another related fellowship program. And Jenny A. Lee was like, well, it's really more like reality show casting, right? And once she said that, I was like, oh, I could fit here. I could be like the weird offbeat one. And that's what actually made me apply.
Okay, that works. So then one of the phrases, and you kind of touched on this, LaToya, so I'll let you answer first, but, you know, when I've talked to people about this program, I'm always hearing, I'm not sure if I should apply. So from you and Yvonne, and then Jim too, I'd like to hear your point of view. What do you say to people who actually say those words to you?
Well, I tend to go on the same campaign that Dory did for me. I just talked to somebody in LA who is a wonderful, wonderful media executive, and I'm like, you need to go, stop what you're doing, stop, you know, find somebody else, take over your business, and go to this program, right? Because it'll change your life, literally. There's no other way to put it. It's not exaggeration. It just is. There is no other time in your life you're going to get the amount of support, both financially, from an educational standpoint, from a cohort standpoint, from a team of ridiculously talented advisors that we have in Jim, Pam, and Don, and the entire Knight Fellowship staff, to, you know, to the world. Just getting an entire year to really focus on something is a gift. Particularly once you get into the professional world and you don't have time to think about the next assignment, the next bagel, the next lunch that you're trying to make. But it's a huge gift, and it's a thing that no one else can give you, and it takes a little while for people because people start immediately talking themselves out of it. I have another friend who's like, well, I can't do it because I have shared custody. I have another friend who tells me all these different reasons I'm not the right candidate for this, or I don't really have any ideas, all of these things. And I'm just like, all right. And I just keep talking to them. And then people do come up with an idea. And if you did come up with an idea, the least that you can do for that idea, if you really think that it's powerful and it has the chance to change things, is to try, right? You don't lose anything by trying to go for this fellowship.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I'm only 2 months into this fellowship program, and it didn't take me very long, and for the rest of the other fellows to say, oh, we get it. This is a dream. It's just a tremendous opportunity for your career, for personal reasons too, or for wherever you're at, whatever stage of life you're at. I think to Jim's point, the diversity that they have been able to attract with the fellowship has been remarkable, and I think that has also been an enlightening experience too, just being able to be exposed to journalists from Pakistan, South America, Latin America, Portugal. It's just this incredibly broad range, and not even from geography. We're talking about careers too, and journalism backgrounds. So I think the culmination of having that type of support group, along with all the other resources that Toya was talking about, and Stanford, it's too much of a good thing to not try and put your name in that. And it took me a while to actually apply because, again, I didn't think I had the experience. I was relatively young to be applying. In this stage, I guess, compared to like past fellows, and I was actually told that at certain points. But I think just going for it, you never know what's going to happen, and don't take yourself out of the game is what I would say. Just put your name in. It is an application process for it, but I think what a lot of applicants will find that it's worth the effort.
So let me just say that if people ask me, I don't know if this is the right time to apply for a fellowship, I say very honestly is that only you can decide what's the right time. But since we have changed our focus, we are taking people from a much greater range of backgrounds and purposes and skills, so that somebody who might have been too young several years ago now is not too young. We're taking people in their mid-20s and people in their late 50s. I do want to say, I should have mentioned this earlier, so people who have been familiar with our program in the past often think of us as having a January deadline. We've moved up the deadline this year to December 1st, so now really is the time to start thinking about this. I think that I will echo what LaToya and Yvonne have said. The fellowship is a great gift. It's a gift of 10 months, and we look for people who are willing to take a risk. If somebody says, I don't know if this is the right time, I've got a good job in the newsroom, or I've got a good situation where I am, I don't know if I really want to risk this, then maybe you're not right for it. But if you say, this is a great, crazy, weird time in journalism, and I think this is a great opportunity to go to Stanford, be a Knight Fellow, and really change journalism. That's what we're about. We're about changing journalism, and we tell our people we don't expect much of them, just to change the world.
Okay, well, we've got a few questions coming in, so I'll hold off on mine. We have one, and I'm not even going to attempt to butcher his name, but he asked, what are the resources will you have access to as a fellow? Like university classes and, what else? He wanted to get a list of the resources you get as a fellow.
I'll take a stab at it, but then it would be really good to hear LaToya and Yvonne on how they're using on how Yvonne is using her fellowship and how LaToya did. You have access to university classes and in all across the university. There are 7 schools at Stanford, and you're eligible to take classes on a not-for-credit basis. The 3 directors, Pam Maples, Don Garcia, and myself, each advise Knight Fellows on their journalism challenges and on their classes, and in fact on their entire year. So we work very closely with people, even though we'll say that it's up to people individually how they spend their year, but we try and help them find those resources. Let me hand it off to LaToya and then to Yvonne.
Cool. For me, and this is the thing that I think I wanted to mention quickly, so thank you for setting it up. There were so many benefits to the fellowship I didn't realize until after I had left, and that my year was over and I was back into the world, and you realize, one, your Stanford email address has a lot of power, right? More power than you think. People who normally would not respond to you see the @stanford.edu and send messages back immediately, right? And you have a chance to keep that after the fellowship, right? 2, the application process. Feels very daunting sometimes when you're writing through and you're trying to articulate an idea and figure out how you back it up and things like that. But then you have basically your foundation for your business plan or your media model that's already done and finished that you can then refer to. I cannot tell you how many times I have sent out my Knight application essay as an explanation for what I was doing, my Knight talk that we recorded at the Bing, it's a Bing Concert Center, right? The Bing Hall.
Bing Concert Hall.
Bing Concert, yeah, I knew it was something like that. Bing Concert Hall, which was brand new when I came, so that's why I don't know the name. But I have my talk that I was recorded at Bing. I was able to use that when I applied for Knight funding. Ooh, I got to involved in that. When I applied for Knight funding, I was able to use that talk as a leverage, and this thing was professionally shot. We rehearsed it. It was beautiful. There's also just like the knowledge that you get being in this space, right? Not only are you with 20 other media innovators and masterminds, and Jim and Don and Pam bring in people from all across the spectrum of technology and politics and things like that to come and speak to you, right? You sit and you talk to Condoleezza Rice. You sit and you have conversations with Bert Herman, who launched, Storify. You have all of these conversations. But, and it's a big part of this. You also tend to get from it this ridiculous amount of cachet that I didn't realize was going to happen until after I went, and I was like, I went to Stanford for free, right? And even though you didn't get a degree and audited courses, and sometimes you're literally in the back of the classroom, like taking notes and not being asked to participate because some of these classes are so popular they immediately sell out. You're stuck in the back. but one of the best things you get from it is just that experience and being there.
And it looks like Wilson just joined us. Wilson,
Yes.
thank you
Hi.
so much for joining us. I'm going to let Yvonne answer the question, but the question is, and I will come back to you, the question is, what were some of the benefits you received from being a fellow besides winning the fellowship? Well, so we'll go to Yvonne, and then we'll come back to you. Yvonne?
Ladies first.
Right. So I will say I've only been here for 2 months, but it's already been very apparent how much support there is in terms of even like logistics, right? So I think the night staff, the night fellowship staff, is really helpful, and also just helping international fellows kind of integrate, understand American culture, and they meet almost like twice a week, and basically talking to folks and helping them navigate Stanford and Palo Alto, which is, you know, a harsh, like a very different place compared to where they came from. And even then, like logistically, you're talking about healthcare, you're talking about someone who's walking you through taxes, like all these different things, like you don't really think about, but they're there and they help take care of it. They're also helping us integrate and take advantage of Stanford's resources. So even during orientation, we were, you know, meeting people from different departments, from the political science department, from the international studies, all the way to physical education, like helping us make the most of our fellowship program. And I think that has been extremely valuable because they, you know, night fellowship is very well respected at Stanford, and you can tell those connections in our network really goes very far, like right from day one at the fellowship. And I would definitely want to add that there's a lot of resources that are unspoken, just from fellows. So all of these journalists that are brought to the room together, I think there's this camaraderie here that's developed over time, and it depends on each class, of course. But I would say for the most part, it's extremely generous in terms of lending their network, lending their expertise for our night projects. This year, I interviewed several of the night fellows just to kind of get things started, and they all just took time and was incredibly helpful and generous in that way too. But I can tell even, you know, we have some fellows who are babysitting for other fellows as for their anniversary, and things like that I think is not as mentioned as much as they should be, but it's there, and I think it really helps people make that transition from working 24/7 to being in a fellowship.
Okay. Wilson.
Okay, well, I think one of the biggest benefits of being in the fellowship is just that they remove the, I would say, mental blocks that we come as professionals, as we work and as we get used to a certain way of working. We kind of get boxed in a certain way of doing things. When you go to the fellowship, those blocks are completely removed. They help you go past and just see that you can really go to the next level in terms of your potential as a professional, as a person. So once you're there, you not only have all these amazing resources that you can use and the time to make a good use of it, they also open your mind to see what else is there that you can do, and how can you take advantage of yourself, and can you grow as a person and as a professional. For me, it was a surprise of how much I changed and how much I expanded into things that I didn't know that I could do, and at the end of the year I ended up being a much better professional, a much better person, also with not only the help of the wonderful staff that they have there, but as Yvonne said, of the other fellows, past and present.
Okay. We got a question from Twitter, and the question is, Stanford is an expensive place to live. Are there resources available to help the fellows find housing?
Yes, there are. We have one of our staff people who works every spring as fellows are selected to help them find housing. We know it's an expensive place, and for that reason, we have a substantial housing supplement that is intended to help defray those costs. But yes, we consider helping fellows find a place to live, a key thing that we need to do.
Yeah, to add to that, just really quick, yes, you can find affordable places to live, but you have to be fast, right? I got the cheapest property, and then in my year, Wilson also got the second cheapest property. So we were paying $1,100 a month, and I think Wilson, you were like 14 something.
Yes.
Yeah, 14 a month each, which is if you're coming from an area that's not like urban or coastal, you'll be like, oh my God, those prices. But let me tell you, that's super cheap. A lot of our other fellows end up paying $2,500. So fast, right? When they send that list, start calling people. Get there immediately. Get there first. That's how you get cheap.
Yeah, it's also if you have a family as well, that also changes the equation a little bit, and you have to move fast also because you have to think of schools and babysitting and all the things that you need for your children as well. So yeah, the best advice is just to move fast.
Right, and also reaching out to the JSK network too. So a lot of fellows have also stayed in the Palo Alto area, and they've been extremely helpful in either from the previous class, from the previous year, kind of transitioning their housing to the current year, or actually just talking to folks who are still living in the area and they might have a lead or two. I will add for singles, I'm actually staying in a place right now that's $900 a month, which is as cheap as I've ever actually had in New York or anywhere. So I think it is very much doable. It is very small. I will say that it's extremely small. But for those who are living alone, it could be a perfect fit. And I wouldn't let that deter you.
Okay, I've got a great question from Patrick Joseph, and he asked, having had a fellowship before, I know how quickly the 9 months go past. How do you suggest fellows maximize their time at Stanford? And do you think it's more important to be intensely project-focused or more exploratory while you're at Stanford?
I think that people should embrace the entire opportunity, right? You are going to end up cramming on your project. It just is, right? Some of the people in our cohort didn't actually decide on what their project was going to be until we were right up against, we have to do these talks, we have to get these talks approved. But I feel like you want to be focused, right? You don't want to waste this time. But at the same time, over-scheduling yourself blocks you from other things. There's so many opportunities, there's so many things in the air, in the wind. Like, I got a lot out of going to this thing called Girl Develop It, which was off campus in San Francisco, and it was girls teaching each other to code, right? And so I ended up spending a lot of time doing that and spending time in Oakland, and those things were just as valuable to me as the classes that I took and at the time that I spent working on my project. I feel like it's more of this fellowship I think is more holistic in terms of looking at the whole you and not just like your output.
Right, and just to echo that, I would say it really just depends on where they are in life, and that's the beauty of it. It's completely flexible and customizable, and it should be to whatever you're experiencing or whatever you need. I mean, the best part is that these resources exist, and you can be taking classes, you can load up as many classes as you want, or you can take advantage of the tech community that's out here, or you can just, take dancing, painting, art, jiu-jitsu, boxing, anything that would be good for you. And I think that is the best part about the fellowship.
I will only add to that it is a process in itself. When you get there, you might go in with a plan, and that plan inevitably is going to change because you're going to find so many different things to do, and maybe some of the classes that you thought that it will be great turn out that they are not what you were looking for. So Stanford offers so many things that I think every one of us at the end of the first month has that kind of feeling that we are missing in a lot of stuff and that we're not going to have enough time. But you come to the realization that it's impossible to see absolutely everything that it's in Stanford, and then it's just prioritizing what is interesting and what will be good for you, and what will you want to get out of the whole experience, whether it's classes or outside. Everybody's different, and everybody crafts his own experience at Stanford.
Thank you all. Jim, I have a question for you from Kara McKenna, and she's asking how much weight is put on the reference letter portion of the application, and what kind of reference letters do you typically see from successful applicants?
So that is a good question. We do put a lot of weight on the reference letters because they're our best way to find out how other people evaluate the applicant. The best reference letters come from people who know you and your work and know what you want to do very well. So that when you're asking people to write letters, make sure that they really understand what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. We would put more weight on a letter from a person in, let's say, in a lower position in an organization who knows you well than from a big name who doesn't know you well. In fact, a letter from somebody who doesn't really talk about your proposal, your journalism challenge, doesn't help us very much. So when you're seeking out references, that's the kind of person I would look for. And you should also, I would recommend that you use your references to give you feedback on your proposal. These are people who know you, can read your proposal and your journalism challenge, and can help you hone it, refine it, and make it better.
Okay. Would any of the fellows like to weigh in on that question, since you guys actually did this?
Yeah, I mean, for my references, I definitely picked folks who had known me for at least 2 or 3 years. I mean, obviously, one of the references has to be your current supervisor, and so I'd known her for maybe 1.5 years. But I would just really emphasize Jim's point. I definitely think that goes a long way. And I don't know what they ended up writing, to be honest, but I do know that they've seen me through thick and thin, in terms of they've seen me when I'm in a down part of my life as well as like on the ups too. And I think just having that perspective, I think it adds something valuable to your application.
I will say that it is an important fact that sometimes gets overlooked by applicants, to actually get the recommendation letter written by someone who actually likes you and who actually wants you to succeed. Because you might have just big name in your company, but just like Jim said, they don't know you, or they really don't want you to have a fellowship. They are not going to put their heart in the words that they write on that letter. So you really want someone that is invested in you. If you have some kind of mentor, that's the right type of person to write the letter.
Okay. I'll go to our next question from Wendy Thomas. Wendy and someone else asked a similar question, is my challenge idea is similar to another one that fellows have done recently. Does that lower her chances of being selected as a fellow?
No. I mean, here's what I would recommend. In the same way that if you were in a newsroom and you wouldn't go to an editor and say, well, I'd like to do this story that somebody else has already done, that would not be an effective pitch. What you would want to do is to take what somebody else has done and build on it, and say how you would move it forward. One of the questions on the application is, who is doing work on a similar problem, and how would your proposal differ? And so that's an important thing to think about. But it's not like, we've had great success with our fellows, but it's not like all the problems in journalism have been solved. So there's plenty of ways to think about going forward. And this gives me a chance also to say that what's really important to us is not the answer that you come to us with, but the question. We think of a Knight Fellowship and the Journalism Challenge as thinking of a question to be answered during the year. So, and this actually goes back a little bit to what we were talking about, how to use a fellowship. One of the things that we encourage people to do is to not try and find the answer before you've really refined the question. So, to come around to the question from, I think it was Wendy Thomas was the person's name. It doesn't, we've had many similar challenges, but they really should work to differentiate by saying what you would do new and better.
Okay, thank you so much, Jim. We have a question from Angel Jimenez de Luis. Sorry about my Spanish. He asked, are there topics for research projects that would not be considered a good fit for the fellowship?
One of the we try and be very non-limiting in what we say is and isn't appropriate, but we do have this standard, and we do ask this question on the application: how would solving this problem, the problem you want to solve, how would it help journalism? We are very much a journalism fellowship, and we want what our fellows do to help improve journalism. So that's another way of saying, if you're proposing a project that has nothing to do with journalism and wouldn't help journalism, that's probably not a good proposal. But we try and not limit in advance our boundaries on this.
Okay. Brittany Freeman has a great question, and she asked, what would you say to someone who is concerned about finding another job after the fellowship's over?
I'll let the fellows answer that. I've got a job.
I think our first question, and I think me and Wilson can talk to us about, is: do you really want a job after the fellowship is over? Because for those who went back into employment, it was a kind of a letdown. Wilson, you can elaborate, because
Yes.
I think you had the job that was established, and then I went into a different job, and I'll talk about that.
Exactly. I will say, in my case, I took a leave from my job and returned to it. But when I came back, and when I was still at Stanford, there were already so many opportunities to go elsewhere, and I couldn't, because I already had a commitment. That I will say that you shouldn't really worry about trying to find a job, because after the year of Stanford, you will find, and the jobs will come to you. I think at least in my class and in recent classes, they have been a pretty good track record of finding places to go elsewhere. Not only you're doing this for a year, but it's also bringing a lot of relevance to you. You're going to be out there with your presentation, with your project, that's going to be broadcast to through Twitter, through blogs. So you're going to get a lot of visibility, and you're going to get a lot of eyes on you. So I don't think it will be hard for a bright professional like all of you to get a new job after the fellowship. It will be a great boost.
Yeah, and I mean, people recognize the cachet of night fellowships, so if that's what you want, I just think that a lot of people might find themselves in the position I was in, and then other friends of mine who've gone through the fellowship since I've gone through, and other fellows before, where it's, you've changed, right? And the things that you used to want out of a job are not the same anymore, right? You know, I am very, very lucky. I went out and I ended up getting a job at the then launching Al Jazeera America, and I spent you know, a great year launching a TV network and understanding how television works, and that was cool. But I decided to leave recently, so now I'm a free agent at the moment. And a lot of people were like, "Why did you quit? You had a good job. Like, why? You know, it's media, it's contracting, things are, you know, you can't count on having those kind of jobs anymore." And I'm like, you know what? That might not be the world I want, right? You get a lot of faith and confidence in yourself from the night fellowships, and it's well justified, right? They choose some of the best people to come here and to work on yourself, essentially. And so when you jump out, you know, being your own boss doesn't feel like that big of a step. When you jump out, going back to freelancing, pursuing that idea that you had, getting fellowship from like the night, getting funding from like the night prototype fund, or pitching yourself to an accelerator. None of those things feels very far away after you complete the night fellowship. If you want a job, they are there, right? And I've had lots of great offers for different things. And I am unfortunately in the kind of spoiled position, thanks Jim, to basically be like, no, I don't feel like that speaks to my soul right now. I mean, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I just want to do something else. And I'm like turning down name brand places. So I mean, I wouldn't, if you have the talent and the drive to land a night fellowship and to execute on your idea or to make significant progress toward an idea that's going to change journalism, I don't feel like the question of will I get a job after this is relevant.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Georgia Dawkins, and she asks, would you recommend this fellowship for a journalist who's still in the first 5 years of her career?
I'll let the fellows answer that.
I'm going to pick on Yvonne. I'm going to make it.
Okay. I would actually, I think the best, having applied, yeah, I probably had about 5 years of experience applying when I applied to the Knight Fellowship. But I think it's the type of experience that you're bringing in. It's actually not even about the length or the time. It's like what kinds of experience that you're bringing in. And I remember talking to Dawn Garcia about this, and she made a comment about how a lot of international fellows, for instance, they come in with a lot of experience given their age or where they are compared to a lot of the American fellows. And we weren't sure whether or not it's because of their environment or their circumstances, but I think that's a really good point. It's not, don't get too hung up on the years as much as what you're bringing in. If you started a company and, you know, went through a lot of different highs and lows of entrepreneurship, I mean, that's a very different experience than working at one place for a long period of time. So I think it's just what you think you also be able to contribute that's very different, and I think that changes like the way you approach the Knight Fellowship. It's not just about how old you are, what period of your career. You really have to figure out whether or not this is for you and explain that, but also like what kind of experiences you bring to the table. And I would say, I mean, I would be curious to hear what the other fellows think about that, but not now that I know, especially that the Knight Fellowship is extremely nimble and agile, I think, in terms of responding to the journalism industry, and they make a point to kind of change their program whenever necessary. Those requisites aren't as important. I think it's just about the type of experience that you are bringing to the table.
Thank you, Yvonne. Georgia, for full disclosure, is one of my mentees, and I'm telling you, Georgia, you need to apply. So we'll move on to the next question. Madeline is asking, the application asks, what resources or people would you seek out at Stanford? What's the best way to start identifying those resources?
I'll just give sort of a general answer, and then I'll let the fellows sort of talk about how they identified the resources that were helpful to them. I would say it's no more complex than starting out just sort of Googling the people who are at Stanford who are working in the field that you're interested in, and then starting to contact them to say that you're interested in a fellowship and you have this idea. Are they interested in it? It's not required. We don't require you to have done that kind of work ahead of time, but it can help inform what you might do at Stanford. And so then let me turn it over to, just first to LaToya.
Oh. I was on Quora, right? So this, remember it by Q or A, Quora. And so when I was doing that part of the film, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do at Stanford? Well, I had never actually been to a big people college. I had gone to community college. I had dropped out of a commuter program at University of Maryland. I was not very well versed in what you get there, but I figured it was a collection of resources and it'd be something cool. And so I went to Quora, and there are all these people, you know, what's it like to be a Stanford Business School student? What's it like to be in the GSB? What's it like to be in education, etc.? Who were the best professors to take at Stanford? All of those questions are answered in meticulous detail. Like, it's amazing how much people will put about their lives on Quora. And so I started reading, and I realized there were some really valuable professors in classes that I wanted to take, and I think I ended up getting 2 of them, of the ones that I listed. I looked at the labs, I looked at where Stanford was situated, and then I said something about, like, if you guys unleash me on Stanford and Silicon Valley at large, right, which, you know, also being in proximity to the Bay Area, startups, I named a few places that I wanted to visit, places I wanted to go beyond, you know, big brand like Google and Facebook, right? and just really looked at like holistically of if I did get it, because you really need to put yourself in the mindset of, okay, I'm going to get this fellowship, and like what is the best thing I can do with my time here. Once you are investigating that, that's where it will lead to, I think, the most natural answer for you.
I would reach out to also like past fellows, like alumni, Knight Fellowship alumni. I mean, I reached out to LaToya while applying, like Martin Konyak, Shazna Nessa, Andrew Donahue, Umbri Body, and even if you don't know them well, I think there's just that type of support and encouragement from the alumni, and because they know how valuable this fellowship program is, and I have no doubt they would encourage everyone to apply if they feel like it's the right thing for them. So tapping into that network and just even cold emailing them, cold calling them, was extremely valuable to me, just to kind of understand what the experience was like, what Stanford had to offer, and what they took advantage of while they were here.
I agree 100%. The former fellows are an incredible resource. But beyond that, I will recommend to approach. If you are really into the whole thing, just approach it as a story. What kind of sources you could find there? So just explore and see what is in Stanford. In my case, I discovered very early just by browsing the Stanford website that they have a huge amount of centers that are just independent from the different schools that they are there. So there are centers for absolutely everything: international politics, economics, law, women's studies, Hispanic studies, etc. And there they will have people that are top class in their field, and many of them will have done some kind of work that at least on the side relates to what your proposal, or what you're thinking your proposal will be. And from there, just it's a matter of expanding. There are also non-profits and for-profits in the Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Mountain View area that you can research that will also there, all the sorts of companies. And even further, then the next step is San Francisco. So just be methodical about it and research all the people that you know that live or work in the area, that have worked in the area, or have done something that you like and that you think that you could be benefited from their help.
Okay. I have another question. Jim, this question is for you from Mihal. She's from Argentina and wants to know, is there a certain level of English that's required for the program?
Yes, we want our fellows to be basically fluent in English, and we do that for a very specific reason, which is that Stanford, the classes and research and so on at Stanford is in English, and if one cannot speak and read and follow English, it's going to be kind of it's going to be a sad experience for everyone. That said, we understand that people for whom English is not their native language can use some special help, and we have a language and culture coach who's on our staff and meets twice a week with international fellows who wish to about not just language but culture kinds of issues. So we have very much. I would say this is part of the way we approach having fellows here, which is that we want our fellows to be successful, and we want to provide the kinds of resources as a staff and a program that will let them be successful. And for our international fellows, we have found that some assistance in language and assistance in navigating U.S. culture helps them be more successful.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I have a question for Ms. LaToya Peterson from Matthew. The question is, how broadly do you define journalism innovator as a person eligible for the fellowship? He says he hasn't been a traditional journalist in a while, but considers himself a news technologist.
Well, that question was aimed at me and not Jim, so I'm going to answer it my way, which is, come on in. I totally was not anything close to a traditional journalist. And I remember looking at my application and going, I am super light on experience. I think I was like, maybe I could like budget to like 2 years of journalism experience. So like I actually posted my full essay online. This is how serious I am about people applying for night fellowship. I posted my essay, the one that got me in, the one that everybody read. It's on Racial Issues. You can go look at it anytime you feel like it. Right? I'll post a link in the chat at some point. But basically, I was like, well, I'm not really a journalist, but, and I started naming all the things that were me doing journalism in the course of my career, which was very weird. And it was like, I think I referenced like cutting subs at Blimpies and doing red carpet string work for a tabloid and like all these very ridiculous things. And it was all fine, right? Because at the end of the day, I felt like the fellowship cared more about ideas, and I just had to show them that I had the chops as a journalist and I thought like a journalist. And so what I was actually doing for money was not necessarily not related. So that's the argument that I made. Jim can talk about that more.
I echo what Latoya said. When we made the changes in the program 5 years ago, one of the key elements was that we would have a broader definition of who was appropriate to be a Knight Fellow, and we don't say journalists. We say we say journalists and journalism entrepreneurs. But we've had last year in particular, we had a software systems architect who had a great journalism idea. We had a journalism professor. We had an attorney who was creating a resource on Islamic law for journalists. We had a game animator who had in an earlier life been a journalist. So we're pretty we're as I say on this and other things, we try not to have boundaries in advance that would exclude people. We do really focus on journalism and how things are going to help journalism, but I like the way Latoya put it. We care more about the ideas than sort of exactly how they made money.
Okay, thank you. Jim, there's a question for you from John Allen, and the question is, how much leeway do you have to try out your projects in your home country while the fellowship is underway?
It's a difficult question to answer sort of in the abstract. We are a residential fellowship. We want our fellows to be at Stanford during the fellowship year. We consider that it's an important element. As all the fellows have mentioned, you learn from each other, from the other fellows in your group. You learn from being at Stanford. So long periods that are spent away from Stanford during the year don't really work for us. That said, that doesn't mean that there isn't some way you might be able to do it long distance. There is in the fellowship year, there's a 4-week period between the autumn and winter quarters where basically one can travel. There's a 2-week period between the winter and spring quarters where one could travel. So it's possible. Just that a fellowship proposal that depended on you being in another country for 6 or 8 weeks during the fellowship year probably wouldn't work out.
Okay. We're kind of getting close to the end, so I'm going to throw out these questions, and if you can just answer them as briefly as possible. I want to get as many in as possible before the end of the hour. The next question is, since you're located in the Silicon Valley and there are all these great companies and tech companies there, as fellows, do you collaborate with them while working on your journalistic projects?
I'll let the fellows answer.
Jim, go ahead.
No, I'll let the fellows answer that.
Okay, I'll say that it depends on the project, and it depends on your own initiative. If you if you meet someone from Facebook, for example, like one of the fellows in our year, you can work with them a little bit closer and get feedback from them. But it depends on you. It's not a group thing unless all the group agrees to work with the company.
Yeah, I would say I haven't reached out to anyone specifically at a tech company, but just using the Knight Fellowship, my Stanford email, and just reaching out to people in the digital archives industry, at least for my project. They've all been incredibly receptive and open to at least talking to me. I'm not sure about a formal collaboration. That's not where I'm at in terms of the project. But I think the reception is very warm.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, how would you advise someone with a research project that involves IT, like creating an application or a website, but the applicant doesn't have a lot of IT skills?
I feel I'll let the fellows answer this too, because they've had to grapple with this.
There's a couple of experiences of former fellows who were in the same situation, and they found a unicorn, as we call them, a programmer who was also interested in news and willing to work with them. It's I won't lie, it's hard. It's really hard to find programming talent in Silicon Valley, because if you think, for example, that the students at Stanford are gonna jump at your project, they already have 2 or 3 offers already, and they have their own startup, because everybody in the Valley has a startup to launch. So it's up to you. You have to work a lot and network with a lot of people to get a programmer to work with you. There are other options, of course, but finding one outside the Valley, but those of course come with their trade-offs.
Yeah, and you also have a bunch of options here too. Like my project ended up being very heavily technical, but I didn't actually do any of that stuff. It was like more about the idea, and then by the time I realized what I needed to do and that I was not going to learn C++ in time to do it, then it was more explaining what the capacity was for it, and then going around later after my fellowship ended and trying to find partners. But you can also use services like Odesk. I think David Sarno used Odesk to get his 3D animation done. And you get a small research stipend, was it like $2,000 or something like that? You get a small research stipend that you can use for anything that's related to your research. So you can pay somebody on Odesk out of that money, or you can pay somebody out of your stipend money, or what have you. But I had a boss a long, long time ago who couldn't use computers. I was hired essentially to be his fingers to type a computer program, and I asked him how he did that, and he goes, "You just hire somebody. Get the idea down, figure it out, and then go find somebody. It's fine. It'll work out."
Okay. Erica just asked a great question. She's from Patagonia, Argentina, and she wants to know what kind of support you offer to fellows who come to Stanford who already have families.
I can answer that. We have a basic stipend. This year it's $65,000, and we have some other things that all fellows get. There's a research and equipment allowance of $3,000. There's a book allowance. There's health insurance, and so on. Then we have for people with families, including domestic partners, we have supplements based on family size. So there's a housing supplement that is based on family size. There is a child care supplement based on how many children you have and how many are under 5. There is health insurance provided. Those in particular, those are all on our website. I'd rather than sort of recite them all here, but that's the best place to go on our website.
Okay, thank you. And we're almost at the end, so I'm going to throw out Elizabeth's question. What are your plans? Well, for Latoya and Wilson, what have you been doing since the fellowship? And Yvonne, what do you think your plans are going to be after you complete the fellowship?
Latoya? Okay, Yvonne?
Oh, okay. I'm not thinking about it, to be honest.
Good.
And yeah, you know what? I think that's something that's going to come up naturally no matter what. And I've been asked that before I started the fellowship and since I've started the fellowship, but I'm not thinking about it because I think so much can change between now and May. I think it's just being open to all the opportunities, seeing what comes. And if you have a very specific vision, I mean, some people have done that in terms of like, that's how I'm going to execute my fellowship. But for me, I really want this to be a learning year. It's my year. It's our year in terms of just taking advantage of the opportunities here and really just trying to soak up as much, meet as many people, have interesting conversations, expand the way you think about journalism. So I've not thought about it. I am not going to think about it until something excites me and it seems like the right opportunity. And then usually when it comes up, you'll feel it, you'll know it, and even if it doesn't come up, you'll see something and it will attract you to it. And I think following those gut instincts will be okay.
Okay. Okay, so for me,
Wilson?
oh, Wilson, go Wilson.
Okay. Well, I came back. I worked for the Wall Street Journal. I came back to the Journal because I hadn't finished my process for the green card. So I got my green card now. So on the side, I launched my own news animation studio, and I've been devoting the rest of my time to it. So now I'm getting to the crossroads of deciding if I'm staying here or dedicating all my time to the animation studio. And I don't know. The world is my oyster. I don't know exactly now what I'm going to do, but I don't rest. I just keep doing stuff. And for example, just in about 2 or 3 weeks, I will be premiering a new animation on immigration, and at the same time collaborating with other fellows, dictating courses, and also a couple of projects that we'll let you know later.
Sweet. And don't forget, we have other fellows too, like Marie Catherine, who the project steward's called Nod. You should get it, News on Demand. Super, super awesome. For me, so I got pregnant during the night fellowship. That's what I won't tell you about in the advertising and the literature. So everybody who goes, make sure you're using protection. It's that California stuff, man. I don't know.
Always.
So I got pregnant. So I had, so basically came back. I got the job at Al Jazeera while I was out there, and they asked me to come back super fast. So I had to cut my planned road trip across America short, fly back, helped launch Al Jazeera America, came back, did the talk at Bain, went back, did a little bit of newsroom management, had the baby, went on maternity leave, and then came back to do news management. Then I realized I really want to do awesome digital stuff. I don't want to really be in news anymore. Not that I am ending anything with journalism, but my friends like Nona de la Pena and other folks who are in video games are doing some really awesome stuff around immersive journalism. Everybody's talking about it now that Oculus Rift is out, but she was doing it way before then. And that's kind of where I want to go. So, I took time off and I'm learning to build a mobile game and I'm doing freelance work to support myself, and things are pretty awesome. And hopefully we'll get more awesome. So there we are.
Okay, we're at the end of this went really quickly. Jim, can I ask you just to make some closing remarks and then we'll finish this up?
Thanks, Benet, and thanks again to you and Tracy Powell for organizing this. You heard from these former fellows and current fellows today what an awesome opportunity a night fellowship is, and I just heartily endorse that. I think that I would encourage everyone who is even thinking a little bit about it to think long and hard about it. Just the process of thinking about the fellowship will help you focus yourself in a really powerful way. We think a night fellowship is a great opportunity. And as the clock in the back shows, it's that the time has come for you to think about it. And I would encourage you just to look at keep watching our website. We're going to have, we believe, some more tips on applying, and just go for it.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the fellows for taking time out of your busy schedules to do this. And Jim, I want to especially thank you for continuing to entrust us to help you get the diverse candidates into the Night Fellowship program, because I think it's a very important program for any journalist, and the fact that, you know, diverse journalists can get an opportunity to do something when they see these fellows that have actually done it. I think it goes a long way. So thank you very much, and thank you all for attending, and have a great day. Thanks.
You. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.